All right, little midweek review here, kind of where we are at this point in the chapter. Um, Historians like to use a phrase known as the Gilded Age, which was taken from the writer Mark Twain. Gilded is a shiny gold surface, but beneath that surface lies a cheap base. In other words, there was this shine about this period, but it wasn't necessarily true to its core. For example, if we were to look specifically at the politics of this time period, we would see that on the surface, this is a pure representation of what representative democracy has become, but at the same time, political machines are running the cities instead of representative municipal government. We also see that in American politics, there's patronage that's taking place in regards to the giving of government jobs from one political party to another political party. And there's also this pool of investors who have been able to amass a fortune who can buy votes in Congress. When you look at it from that perspective, a lot of this is built on the prosperity of a few and, of course, the poverty of many. We have also these captains of industry who are championing this idea of social Darwinism, proposed originally by William Graham Sumner and basically applied to this time period by Herbert Spencer, and then of course argued by Andrew Carnegie and some of these rich industrialists, that laissez-faire capitalism has led them to become the most successful entrepreneurs. And because of that, they are the fittest. And that is, and not so much an excuse, but it's kind of a dubious argument, because at the same time they were champion no government restriction, no government intervention into my business practices. They were championing tax credits. They were accepting grants from the government. They were supporting tariffs from the government. So you can't necessarily have it both ways. Our robber barons, however, not all but some, eventually do begin the practice of philanthropy, and that is instituted by Andrew Carnegie in what he would call the gospel of wealth, that once an individual is blessed with an enormous amount of wealth, that out of good deeds they have a social responsibility to pour it back into society. For Carnegie, it was medical research, it was the libraries, it was museums, and John D. Rockefeller did the same as far as in college universities, helping to establish medical research programs also. Also in this Gilded Age, there was this unprecedented amount of city urbanization. As we've seen and we've heard at this point in the chapter, there is definitely an influx of demographics changing. Large-scale Eastern European immigrants are coming to the country. The pull factor is obviously the Industrial Revolution. The amount of mass production that's taking place needs a large labor force, not necessarily a large labor force of skilled workers, but a large labor force of unskilled workers. And in this cycle of this Industrial Revolution, as the bosses of these factories and as the investors who back these factories and as the entrepreneurs who turn these into corporations, as they all begin to perfect and strive for more efficiency, unfortunately for the common man or the common factory worker, their life does not get better. Their income does not get better. Their working conditions does not get better. And furthermore, the courts in this time period refuse to hear the complaints of the workers. So as we're progressing here in this Industrial Revolution from a technological standpoint, whether it be Alexander Graham Bell's telephone, Edison's power plants, and the invention of the electric light bulb, the railroad revolution, the steel revolution, the oil revolution, whatever it may be that is really shaping and changing this time period, it's not changing for all. It's not trickling down to those who are doing the legwork and the base work and making these wheels of production changing. They're not any beneficiaries of that yet. And what it's going to do is it's going to spark reform. Some of the reform that we're going to get from the national level is going to start with the transfer of power. Our Gilded Age presidents aren't necessarily, let's just say, involved in large-scale corruption like previous, let's say, a Grant administration. But if we were to go from what Rutherford B. Hayes to James Garfield to Chester A. Arthur into Grover Cleveland and then Benjamin Harris, most historians will say that these were just weak presidents. They chose not to take a stand. They chose not to challenge. They chose not to, get involved in the current politics of their day. Other than the fact that we did get for the first time the dismantle of a system that was put in place by Andrew Jackson, obviously a few chapters ago, known as the spoils system, as far as giving government jobs from one administration to the next administration. When you get done watching this video, I want you to listen to the short on the civil service reform, which would be a major piece of legislation that comes out of this Gilded Age as well. We also know that inside the factory there was a strive for efficiency. The champion of this would be Frederick Winslow Taylor, known as Taylorism. How can we produce more in the means of production? How can we employ this idea of, by Henry Ford, who's going to champion what is known as the assembly line, and employ the amount of workers that we need, at the same time produce the product at the same rate. And this strive for efficiency was a revamping, a reorganization of the whole factory system. It didn't require a lot of skill. And of course, the large pool of workers are not necessarily skilled machinists. They're not necessarily skilled workers. Most of them are of foreign birth, which allows these workers to manipulate, take advantage of, and really exploit the labor force with unlimited power, and then of course profiting in an unbelievable amount, surpassing all levels of income in literally all times previous in regards to the amount of capital that is generated from the revenue of these major corporations and major industries. We're also going to see the government be called upon to do something as these corporations become what we refer to as trusts or monopolies. We're going to, when you leave this video today, you're going to learn about how the robber barons such as an Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller were able to amass large amounts of money through two business ideologies, one of which is known as vertical integration, and that is basically owning all the aspects of your business, and the other one is called horizontal integration, and horizontal integration is owning all the businesses that are like you, or you strive to buy out all the oil companies and you amass a fortune and you literally control the entire oil trade. There's no room for competition. No small businesses are going to be selling any other types of oil but your oil. You control all means of that. Our first piece of legislation is known as the Sherman Antitrust Act. I also would like you to listen to that short today. There's going to be some loopholes in the Antitrust Act that will allow companies to manipulate the initial purpose of the Sherman Antitrust Act, which is to prevent these big holding companies or these big trusts from owning everything. There should be separate entities or separate companies able to operate in this sphere of competition. It won't be until next chapter that the government closes that loophole with what is called the Clayton Antitrust Act, but that's a little further down the road. We also know that as far as this point up into the chapter, that some of the ills of this industrial age are becoming exposed. In the video yesterday, you learned about an individual by the name of Jacob Riis, who really is one of our first investigative journalists. There are going to be many more that lead us into the progressive movement, who aren't afraid to expose the filth and the crime and the deplorable living conditions of America's urban cities, to show what machine politics have neglected, to show the corruption of these machine politics who have sworn to uphold their duty as municipal leaders, and they're failing to recognize or failing to extend any form of support codes or cleanliness to the city. And of course, he writes a book called How the Other Half Lives, and shows and really opens America's eyes to the current slums of the American cities. Of course, part of the slums was a result of these cities got too big too fast. There wasn't garbage collection. There wasn't adequate plumbing. There wasn't all the amenities and the municipal things that we take for granted in regards to water bills and power plants and electricity and all the things that were just in their infancy. They had yet to become suitable, or let's just say they weren't extended to all Americans yet within the city. So we're going to spark an age of reform. Tomorrow I'll begin the lesson which is known as the social gospel movement, which really is the prelude, or I like to say the grassroots movement, to what is known as the progressive movement. And of course that progressive movement will try to fix the ills that have been discovered because of urbanization, because of monopolies, because of the rampant corruption and patronage in American politics, and really try to make America more of a free and just society for all, not just for those who benefit from capitalism, but for those who participate in capitalism. So, just a little midweek lesson. What I'm going to do is I'll put the links to the shorts in today's assignments for Wednesday. Go ahead and listen to those. And if you have any questions, please email me. If you were confused about anything, let me know. Other than that, I'll see B Day tomorrow. A Day, you continue to work your Thursday and Friday assignments.